I'm going to go over how to use the study system log so you have a better understanding of it. So the first thing I want to do in general is to tell you that the study system log is basically designed to help you track yourself until you get familiar with the setup and as far as which things you need to do at which point in the study process. So this is just helping you track yourself. You can use this long-term, short-term. Initially, you're going to have to do it just so we can have a line of communication of what you're doing and what's working, what's not, and eventually we'll see where it goes. So as far as what the different parts are, you have interact as stage 1, retrieve as stage 2, and assess as stage 3. Now, ideally, you want to do 2 of these stages in a single session, if at all possible. The only exception is when you're first getting introduced into the material, you're only going to have the interact options. So let's say I'm starting Unit 1, Lecture 1. Interact is as far as I'm going to go for my first study session. Now, after I go over it, then you have interact, and you can do retrieve with that. You want to combo them, so do this with this, or do interact with assess, do retrieve with assess. Ideally, you want to try to do 2 stages whenever you are doing studying after the fact for material, so keep that in mind. The ideal ones would be retrieval and assessing because those are the most bang for your buck techniques. So for example, you start out by making your own concept map from memory. That way you see where you're at, you cross-check it with what you know, meaning your notes, and then you correct any mistakes and misconceptions you have, and then you go on to assess yourself, and you could do that by just doing the homework. So if you really want to get the most out of studying after we get introduced to the topic, is try to do 2 and 3 as often as possible in combination. You could do EDs individually as well, but ideally 2 at a time is usually more effective. So let's go over the different stages. So study basically just means you look at the information, you're not doing any kind of active event. It's just basically trying to get an idea of what's going on. Concept map, you're going to make a concept map as you look at the information, much more effective than just studying by itself. Video means you're watching a video, whether it's my PowerPoint videos or some other source on YouTube, you're using it to kind of get introduced to the topic. So any of those would be considered stage 1. Stage 2, these are all retrieval processes, meaning that you're doing this from memory. You don't have any notes in front of you, you don't have any resources, and you just do this straight from what you know. So, for example, teaching, you're going to teach a topic from memory. That means no one's in front of you, or someone could be in front of you, whatever works for you, but you're trying to teach the information. We're doing notes, same thing. You're trying to do it straight from memory. You could do bullets. You could do just free write, everything you know about a topic. Concept map, you make a concept map from memory, ideally similar to the one you already made. If it works properly. Once you finish this stage, I should point out that you do want to cross-check it with your notes to make sure it's accurate. Now, if you're at a point where you've gone to material so many times, you know you're okay, this is just more just practice retrieving, then you don't need to do the cross-checking. But otherwise, you do want to cross-check and make sure that everything you wrote is accurate and not just, all over the place. Stage 3, self-test means you're basically testing. The ones on Moodle are probably the best source of that. If you don't have a class that provides you self-test, and you obviously can use Khan Academy or other online resources, you ideally want something that's automated because you want instant feedback. That's the main benefit of self-testing, is it tells you right away if you're right or wrong, and then you could go back and address those issues. Homework is a test. You always should do homework as if it's a test, meaning that you time yourself, no notes, straight from memory, and then once you, let's say, give yourself 30 minutes and you only finish half the questions, then you step back and say, okay, look, I have a lot of gaps in my understanding, or the homework's really difficult, could be either or. In that situation, you may want to go back and look over your information again, do a separate study session, and then come back and do the rest of the homework so that you have more benefit from it. But try not to use your notes, especially whatever time limit you give yourself. Ideally, give yourself 20, 30 minutes on assignment, see how much you can finish. Let's say after 20, 30 minutes, you have 4 or 5 left. Go back and look at your notes, figure out what's going on. Use them as a guide if you have to, but your first run through should never be with your notes. Flashcards, Anki is going to be your best friend for that, and we'll talk about that in more detail later. So here are your different options for subjects. You could create your own for this last one and create your letter code. All right, so let's say we're doing week of 8-15, so first week. Let's say we're going to do science. This is, let's say, Tuesday, hypothetically. This whole thing is just there to track yourself. The way it works, your sessions or your classes go from left to right. So this is going to be 1 week in a specific class. This is another class, this is another class, another class, another class. That's how you should treat them. Go horizontally per class. So if I'm doing science here, I'm going to do science all the way across. So let's say I only did one session of science this week, then they'll show I didn't do 2, 3, or 4. But for math, let's say I did 1, 2, 3, and 4, then wonderful. Obviously, the more times you interact with material, the better, but you don't want to get to the point you're doing it every single day, and that gets a little too much. So getting back to this now. So we're doing Tuesday. We're going to do interacting. So let's say I'm going to do a concept map from looking at the notes. So I'm going to use the PowerPoint to make my own concept map as I go. The most common thing you do is a preview activity. Let's say it took me about 25 minutes to do that. Retrieve. Now, you don't, once again, do this when you're first interacting with the material because you don't have enough knowledge to go back and do retrieval or homework as a preview activity. So we're not going to do stage 2 or 3 here. So let's say we come back. Session 2, this is going to be, let's say, 3 days later. You want to space out your studying. Don't do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's too much. The more space you give between study sessions, the more benefit you give because your mind's going to have to work a little hard to retrieve the information, which means that you're going to get more out of it. So this was a Tuesday, so let's say Friday. You come back and say, you know what, I want to go back and say this information. So let's say we do concept map from memory to start off. We don't want to do stage 1 again when we're reviewing or going after the lecture has been given. So if we give lecture 1 on Wednesday, so let's say you did this on Tuesday as a preview activity. Wednesday, we went over the lecture. Then on Friday, you're going to go back and interact. Ideally 24 hours afterwards is good if you can, but I know time is difficult sometimes to get for doing that kind of thing. So if you do on a Friday or Saturday, it's not the end of the world. You don't want to go longer than 2-3 days because by then you're going to forget so much that you're going to be starting from scratch and you have to go back and interact again. So ideally Thursday, worst case scenario, Friday, to go back and do your stage 2 for this. So I'm going to do concept map from memory. Let's say that took me 10 minutes. That's built it from scratch. And then for my assessment, I'm going to do my homework. So I had a homework assignment for this, so I'm going to do the homework. And let's say that took me 30 minutes. Now, homework could take a little bit longer, so that's where there's little gaps here. So if you find yourself taking an hour or 45 minutes, just put that here. That's why I left this last column blank so that you could put your own time frame in the event that this take longer than anticipated. So then we take a few days off. We come back, let's say Sunday, let's say Monday of the next week. Actually, we should do the same week. Sorry. Let's say we do Sunday. We're going to make this a really brief one. I'm just going to do stage 3 only. And that's because I'm pretty comfortable with the material, so I don't need to go back and retrieve first. And because I want to finish my homework, which is due on Monday, so I'm just going to do homework as a test. And then as far as time frame for this, did the wrong section. So homework as a test. So this is going to take me a total of 30 minutes. And then I'm done. So that's one example of how you could run a week's worth of study sessions. Now, do I expect you to do all 4 in a week? No. Some weeks you're going to have 2. I think if you're doing only 1 per week, that's a problem because it's difficult for anybody to really understand what you're doing or do one session alone. So I'd be cautious trying to cram everything to a single day. If you have 1 hour total for the whole week, let's say, because you have so many commitments and obligations, then, break it apart into 20 minutes here, do 20 minutes here, and then 20 minutes here. So, we do this like on a Monday, let's say Thursday and a Sunday. So that's how I would distribute the time. Try not to do, all your studying in a single day because it's completely useless. Your mind doesn't have enough time to really develop its ideas and thoughts, and you won't get much benefit from it. And you can do the same thing for another class, math, and you go through the same sequence. And once again, the key here is that when you first are getting introduced to the material, that means you don't know enough about it, just do a stage 1 only. But when you have some understanding, I mean, the lecture has already been given, then you want to do a stage 2 and a 3 combo if possible, ideally. Always try to do 2 before you do a 3, a self-test or homework or a flashcard session, because you're going to get more out of it. It's more efficient. You may think it's taking you more time, but you'll find in the long run you're going to actually save more time. So that's how you use the logs. This would be 1 week's worth for all your classes. And then the backside would be for another week, so that's 2 weeks. You'd show it to me after 2 weeks, and then we use that to kind of figure out what's going on and try to figure out a better methodology for you. So, like, for example, maybe doing a concept map as retrieval is not your best bet. Maybe just teaching would be better. That's the kind of stuff we would be discussing once we have these logs completed.